Tech companies have, I think, reached peak levels of deception. You will see incredible headlines everywhere you look, but as soon as you peel back the clever wording, you take away the hidden asterisks, and you remove the sneaky manipulation of data, you realize that never in history has such little change been sold to us as if it's so much. In this video, I'm going to show you how they get you. And I feel like we have to start with the magic new catch-all term of the tech industry, up to. What we need to see, and what we used to see a lot more of, is this new product is X better than the last one. This very simple idea basically doesn't exist anymore. Practically every single tech company quotes every single change as up to. Up to 2 times faster, gets up to 8 more hours, is up to 2 times faster. You'll notice they don't even write it as up to. A lot of the time they'll just mutter it quickly under their breath like it's some sort of pedantic footnote that you don't need to pay attention to. But if you think about it, any stat that starts with an up to doesn't mean anything. It's to be able to stick a massive number on your web page and not be sued for it. So if you see up to followed by a percentage improvement, honestly just disregard it and go search up specifically how much better that product is in exactly what you're planning on doing with it. Okay, so in announcement keynotes and a lot of advertising specifically, a lot of companies like to do this thing where they combine a bunch of different specs from different versions of the same product into one page, creating what I like to call the imaginary spec. So one of the most common versions you'll see is a company will put the maximum up to performance number alongside the minimum starting at price, and they'll put them next to each other in a product where you can't actually get the maximum performance for the minimum price. Here's Rivian, for example, on the RT website. You'll see, wow, 420 mi range and a 0 to 60 in under 2.5 seconds, starting at under $74,000, but not exactly, because the one with 420 mi range is the dual motor, which has a 3.4 seconds 0 to 60. Still quick, but the 2.5 second version costs $30,000 more and has 40 mi less range. And for $73,000, you don't get either of those things. So yeah, this here is an imaginary spec. Oh, and by the way, that's another one while we're at it, EV range claims. Now there are laws around how accurate your range claims actually have to be, just like with gas mileage, and some companies are a little more optimistic about that range claim than others. Fine, but the fact is, we are still pretty early in this battery tech, and the tiniest, even seemingly insignificant things can make a pretty significant difference to your range. And so even when you break it all the way down to specific Rivian models, the one that does the 2.5 second 0 to 60, you can see that 374 mile range claim right here. Well, when you actually click in, that's when you realize that's on a specific wheel with a specially designed sticky Michelin tire. And then, oh, look at that. You're actually getting 338 mi of range. You'll have to switch down to the standard sport wheel and tire to get the 374 mi of estimated range. So yes, even this here was an imaginary spec, and I promise you, Rivian is far from the only offender in the world of cars and in tech. It is incredibly frustrating when tech companies invent completely new specifications just to lock you into their ecosystem, charge a premium, and make direct comparisons nearly impossible. Here is how they pull off this confusing marketing trick. 1. The buzzword rebrand, Apple's unified memory. By rebranding standard RAM as unified memory, Apple reframes a basic spec as something entirely unique. While integrating RAM onto the chip does increase efficiency, it masks a major downside. The CPU and GPU must share a single, small pool of memory. Despite Apple executives claiming that BB of unified memory equals BB on a Windows PC, BB is still physically just BB. This clever wording allows them to skimp on base memory and charge exorbitant prices for upgrades. 2. The camouflage spec, DVS, and displays. The TV market is arguably the worst offender for using invented metrics to mask cheaper technology. Fake refresh rates. When brands advertise a 120 motion rate, the screen usually isn't a true HSET display. It's often just a standard HSET panel using aggressive motion smoothing software. The OLED mirage, terms like OLED, QLED, and QNED are explicitly designed to look like OLED on a retail box. In reality, they are just rebranded much cheaper LCD screens. 3. Factually false metrics. Some invented specs defy basic math and geometry. 1-inch camera sensors. These sensors do not measure 1 inch in diameter, width, or length. The naming convention is an outdated holdover from television broadcasting vacuum tubes. 1K displays. This resolution does not feature 1,500 pixels in any direction. It is simply a marketing term wedged between P and P to sound more advanced. The bottom line, when comparison shopping becomes just a quick search away, tech giants rely on intentionally confusing jargon. By muddying the waters, they force everyday consumers to stop comparing numbers and simply take the brand's word for it. This is a Sony ZV. Here is the breakdown of why those camera and display specs are misleading. The 1-inch sensor illusion. When you hear a camera like the Sony's Minos, one has a 1-inch sensor. You probably picture something the size of a professional DSLR sensor. It isn't. This naming convention is an outdated holdover from television broadcasting, which used vacuum tubes instead of digital sensors. Back then, a vacuum tube with a 1-inch outer diameter only had a usable light-sensitive area of about 16 mm diagonally. Today, a 1-inch type sensor is actually just 16 mm, meaning it's named after the size of a theoretical glass tube that hasn't been used in decades, purely because it sounds bigger and better for marketing. The 1K display math problem. We intuitively expect resolution names to make sense based on pixel counts. K means roughly 4,000 pixels across, 3,840 times 2,160. K means roughly 8,000 pixels across. However, the math falls apart at lower resolutions. The tech industry started calling 2,560 times 1,440 K, measuring horizontally, but then flipped the rules for P, 1,920 times 1,080, calling it K based on its vertical resolution, even though it's nearly 2,000 pixels wide. Because P became K and P became K, smartphone companies invented 1K to describe screens that sit right in the middle. It has absolutely nothing to do with a 1,500 pixel measurement. It's just a marketing buzzword used to sound more advanced. And that's if there's even a hardware change at all with new products. What's becoming increasingly common these days is this focus on vaguely defined new software features. So, if you're launching a new smartphone, let's say you're holding a big event and a live stream to tell people what's new about it, then the thing that is useful to see is what specifically is new about that product. A good example of this is the privacy display on Samsung's Galaxy S Ultra. It's a software feature, but it's one that actually required them to physically change the way they built the display to work. So, it's made for this phone. But unfortunately, the vast majority of new features that we actually see marketed here are not that. Like if we pull up the Galaxy S event, they spent this much time talking about the new Samsung AI features, and then literally just as long talking about Circle to Search. They talked about it like it's this revolutionary new feature that's only made possible thanks to Samsung's deep partnership with Google. Our partnership continues to go strong as we create new ways to do more with Google on Galaxy devices. But Circle to Search is also on Google phones. It's on Xiaomi phones. It's not really got anything to do with Samsung apart from just them being the first to show it. And they do this every year to buff out their presentations and try to make you associate those Google features with Samsung. And it's not just confusing which features are also coming to other brands. Where I think it gets really intentionally confusing at these launch events is which features that you're talking about are also coming to your own older phones. Don't get me wrong, it's a good thing that big companies support their older models. I mean, they kind of have to. They did promise you when you bought them. But the thing that's misleading is spending 60% of the next phone's launch event talking about how it's the coolest phone in the world and you should upgrade, because it has all these next-gen features, but then never mentioning that those features are also coming to the phone that you're watching the event on. We added a brand new capability that goes beyond device control. Now Bixby can bring you up-to-date information directly in the conversation. So, you see how this new Bixby is being positioned as one of the perks of the Galaxy S series, but actually it can run on even a Galaxy S. And this kind of stuff is genuinely most of these launch events now. And speaking of older products, what's with companies now who launch a new product, but then only compare it to another product that came out like 3+ years ago? Apple is the worst for this. Like, take the latest MacBook Pros. So we go to the performance section, and the headline number is, oh, would you look at that, up to 8 times faster AI performance. So they got the up to in there. They've got the specific use case, all to make sure that they have this super impressive quotable 8 times number, but then also it's 8 times faster than the M family. What? These are the M generation chips released in 2026, and they're comparing them to the MS released across 2020 and 2021, 5 to 6 years apart. And what they would say is, well, many users will be upgrading from an M. We're just being helpful. To which I would say, if I was using a worn-down, slightly busted 6-year-old M laptop, my decision is not do I upgrade. It's actually do I upgrade to the M or do I instead buy the last Gen M and save a bunch of money. How much difference is there between those two choices? I don't know. Apple won't tell me. All this is a thinly veiled tactic to help take what is in most instances like 5 to 10% of real-world improvement all the way into these astonishing sounding numbers like 8 times. But let's be honest, this is a joke. It's a bit like if you were a world-class runner, but then the way that you prove you're a world-class runner is by comparing your speed to when you were 8 years old. Let's be real, tech specs today are chosen for marketing, not usability. Companies optimize for numbers that sound good in a keynote, even if they mean absolutely nothing in the real world. Here are 3 ways they are tricking you. 1. Fake thickness. Companies love to brag about the thinnest device ever, but they only measure the thinnest point. They conveniently ignore the massive camera bump you can't actually remove. The culprit, Honor marketed the Magic V as the world's slimmest foldable, but it was actually thicker than Samsung's. Why? They excluded the camera bump and the built-in screen protectors you aren't allowed to take off. 2. The brightness arms race. We are trapped in a meaningless war over peak nits. The reality, a 6000 nit peak brightness, might just mean a single pixel can flash that bright for 3 seconds while playing HDR content in direct sunlight. Put that 6000 nit phone next to a 2600 nit Samsung Galaxy S Ultra in day-to-day use, and you won't notice a difference. Ignore peak brightness, look at typical brightness. 3. Megapixels and meaningless zoom. When it comes to phone cameras, sensor size dictates quality, but marketing departments prefer big numbers like resolution and digital zoom. Samsung has pushed 200 megapixels for generations, yet your phone still takes 12 megapixel photos by default. Then there's digital zoom. The Nothing Phone 8 Pro boasts a X Ultra zoom, but at X, it looks significantly worse and captures less real detail than an iPhone. The truth about zoom, how far a phone can digitally zoom, has zero correlation with camera quality. It only correlates with how low a company's standards are for what counts as a photo. By that logic, I could crop into a blurry smudge on a 15-year-old phone and call it X zoom. The takeaway: take everything tech companies tell you with a massive grain of salt. Nothing is getting 8 times better year over year, and you don't need to upgrade annually. And if a company brags about their maximum digital zoom, run for the hills. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what tech myth you want me to debunk in the next video.